So we'll start with the vocabulary on page 1. So this first verb, emere, is to buy. Kras means tomorrow, as in procrastinate. You procrastinate, you put something off for tomorrow. Ipse is self, like himself, herself. Itself could be myself, for example, ego ipse. Turba is a crowd. Multus means much, or in the plural would be many, multi. A verbum is a word. Magnus or magnus means big, great. Frustra means in vain or unsuccessfully. Vincere is to conquer or defeat. A scelus or scelus is a crime. Pecunia is money. Dicere is to say or speak. Superare is to overcome or overpower. Timere is to fear. Effugere is to escape. Remember, fugere is to flee or run away. Effugere, to flee successfully, in other words, to escape. An ager is a field. Absum, I am away, I am absent, I am not there. Ingens is huge. Post plus accusative means after. Victoria is victory. Persuadere is to persuade. A locus is a place. An amicus is a friend. Latus means happy. And celum is the sky or heaven. Okay, and then underneath that, there's a little review of the endings for fourth declension nouns. Okay, so this word gradus is an example of a fourth declension noun, and you have gradus is the same for nominative and vocative, then gradum, the accusative, then gradus with a long U there. So I'm going to add in the long U symbol, then gradus, okay, and then you have gradui, which again, that has a long vowel at the end, a long I, and then gradu, so there you are, the ablative gradu, and then you have that genitive singular is repeated 3 times in the plural, gradus, 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 nominative, vocative, accusative, and then graduum, it's the genitive plural, and then gradibus twice is the dative and ablative plural. Okay, and then some recap questions. When you meet a new noun, for example, gradus in a dictionary, how can you tell its fourth declension? Okay, well, you have to look at the nominative, let's say look at the nominative and genitive singular endings. Right, if it's fourth declension, you will have us for the nominative, and then us, like that, us for the genitive. As opposed to, for example, second declension masculine nouns, which have us in the nominative but a long I in the genitive. Okay, now most fourth declension nouns are masculine, so the answer for number 2 is masculine. 2 exceptions are manus and domus, which are what gender? They are feminine. So those are 2 unusual ones because they're feminine. Now domi in number 4, that is a locative form and it means at home. Right, at home. And then there's also that form domum, which means to home or homewards. And then number 5, purpose clauses and indirect commands can both be expressed by ut or ne plus the subjunctive. And the tense of the subjunctive that we've seen so far is the imperfect subjunctive, which, if you remember, is formed from the present infinitive plus the endings. So in the active, you'd have, for example, amarem, amares, amaret, amaremus, amaretis, amarent. And then in the passive, you'd have amarer, amareris, amaretur, amaremo, amaremini, amarentur. Okay, and then what we are meeting today is a new type of verbs. These are very common actually, but not too complicated once you get used to them. They're called deponent verbs. And these are verbs, this is the key phrase here which I've underlined. These are verbs which are passive in form, but active in meaning. Right? So they have active meanings like to try, to follow, to encourage, or whatever, but they look passive. So they have passive endings, but you translate them actively. So for example, if you look at this verb here, konatur. Now, tur is a passive ending. So you expect something like, he is being something. But in fact, the meaning is active. He is trying. And that's because this verb, konor, is a deponent verb. It is passive in form, but active in meaning. And then here's an example in the perfect tense, konatus sum. That looks like a perfect passive form. I have been something. But it's a deponent verb, konor, and so you translate it actively. I have tried. And when you meet a new deponent verb in a dictionary or a word list, you can tell that it's deponent because the forms that you're given, right, the forms that you see in the dictionary entry are ones that look passive, right? So for example, if you looked up the verb to love in the dictionary, you can tell that it's not deponent because it has active looking forms in the dictionary. Amo, amare, amavi, amatum. Right, it has the active forms in the dictionary. If, on the other hand, you look up a verb like konor in the dictionary, the forms that you see are ones that look passive. Konor, konari, konatus, sum. Those are the three principal parts of that deponent verb. And because they're in the dictionary and they look passive, that tells you that it's a deponent verb. Right? Because the dictionary would not normally give you a verb's passive forms. And notice these principal parts, these are exactly the same as passive forms of a normal verb, passive forms of a non-deponent verb. For example, the verb to love, amare, you could form those parts, amor, amari, amatus, sum, but those are not the principal parts of the verb to love. Okay, so if you compare these principal parts, right, these in the left-hand column, these are the principal parts, the first two principal parts of normal verbs. Okay, o, are in the first conjugation, eo, ere, o, ere, io, ire, and then io, ere. Right, those are like all the verbs we've met in the past. In the right-hand column, you can see the equivalent first and second principal parts for deponent verbs of each conjugation. Right, so or, ari, eor, eri, or, eor, iri, and eor, e. And all of those are identical to passive forms, passive versions of the normal ones. So for example, if you let's take the second conjugation, eo, ere, right? As an example, moneo, monere. That means I warn and I warn and to warn. But you could also say moneor, moneri. I am being warned and to be warned. Right? So you can make these forms out of any normal verb. It's just that there are also deponent verbs which always look passive, and they're actually translated actively. So let's start with some examples from the first conjugation. So first conjugation deponent verbs have principal parts that end or, ari, and artus, sum. And as you'd expect, the us in the perfect stem agrees with the subject. So for example, puella conata est. The girl has tried. Right? And you've got an a at the end of conata because the girl is feminine. The subject is feminine. Again, remember this form looks passive, but you translate it actively because konor is a deponent verb. So here is the table of how this forms. Okay, so there's the present, and there's the perfect. And again, these endings are exactly the same as the passive of normal first conjugation verbs. And the same goes here. for the future tense, and a tense which is called the future perfect. Now the future perfect is a tense that we haven't studied together. I've just put it here so that the tables are complete, but I wouldn't worry about it too much because you very rarely see it, right? That literally means I will have tried, but again, you won't see it very often, so don't worry about it. Then again, here is the imperfect tense, and here is the pluperfect tense. Exactly the same as the passive for normal first conjugation verbs. So let's practice a bit here. So ammo, let's say that we want, here we are. Okay, let's say that we want ammo in the present passive. So this is amor, right? And then remember the present passive endings oristur, mur, meniuntur. So you have something like this, right? So you have amor, amaris, amatur, amamur, amamini, and amantur. Okay, so I'm going to paste that in here. Okay, there we go. Now, miror, mirari, miratur sum in the present tense. Well, this is and it means to admire or wonder at something. In the present tense, that will look exactly the same, right? Because this is a deponent verb in the present tense, which looks just like a normal verb in the passive. So you'll have miror, and then that mir stem will be repeated each time. So miror, miraris, miratur, miramur, miramini, and mirantur. Okay, so it will go just like that. Okay. Then ammo in the future passive. So this is I will be loved. Right, so the future tense here is bor beris bitur. So you have ama, that's the stem, and then bor beris bitur, bimur, and then bimini, and then buntur, like that. Okay. And then here we have this verb hortor, hortari, hortato sum, which is deponent, and therefore its future tense is exactly like the future passive of amare. So you get hortar, and then again those same endings, right? So bor, beris, bitur, bimur, bimini, and buntur, like that. Okay. Then amare in the imperfect passive, right? So this is ama, there's our stem, and then we have for the imperfect passive bar, baris, bartur, and then barmur, barmini, and bantur. Okay, so I'll paste that in here. And then here we have a deponent verb, moror, moror, morari, moratur sum, which is to delay. And so, again, it looks exactly like amare in the imperfect passive. So we have mora, there's our stem. And then again, same thing, bar, baris, bartur, barmur, barmini, and bantur, like that. Okay, perfect passive of ammo, amare. So this is the one where you take the supine, the fourth principal part, and you add the verb to be in the present tense, right? So if you remember, you get amatus or amata sum, then amata or amata est, and amatus est. Right, then the plural amati or amatai, sumus, and then estis, and then sunt. So it'll be like this. And then for the perfect tense of hortor, again, it's deponent, so it goes the same way. So you get hortatus or hortata sum, and then s, and then est, and then hortati or hortatai for the plural, sumus, estis, and sunt, like this. Okay, and then for the pluperfect passive, okay, for the pluperfect passive, it's the same, but we're going to use the imperfect of to be rather than the present. So we're going to have, for amara, we're going to have amatus or amata eram, for example. So eram, eras, erat. And then for the plural, amati or amatai, eramus, eratis, and erant. Like this. And then for hortor, again, it will be the same thing. So hortatus or hortata eram. And then eras, and then erat, and then eramus. And then, sorry, here we're actually going to need, because it's plural, we're going to need to change it to hortati or hortatai, eramus, eratis, and erant. So there we go. All right, now we have some second conjugation deponent verbs. These are ones that go eor, eri, and so they go just like the passive of moneo. Okay, so for example, let's have a look at this table here. This is the verb videor, videri, Vsauce, which means to seem. And it's exactly identical to the present passive of video. So videor could mean I seem, I appear to be something, which is deponent, or it could just be I am seen, passive. So here it is in the present and the perfect. Okay, videor and so forth, Vsauce, right, here it is in the future, videibor. There it is in the future perfect, Vsauce ero, I will have seemed, or I will have been seen. And there it is in the imperfect and in the pluperfect. And then for the third, fourth, and mixed conjugations, here are some examples. This one is very, very common. Loquor, loqui, locutus sum, which is to speak. Partior, not very common. Partiri, partitus sum, to share. And morior, this one's quite common. Morior, mori, mortuus sum, which is to die. And that one is mixed conjugation. And so here's an example of how these ones go. Here's the present of loquor, partior, and morior. There's the future. And there is the imperfect. So let's try some practice here. This is Latin to English. So number one, Romani, the Romans. And the main verb is non conabuntur. Now, buntur looks future passive, but here it's not really passive because conor is deponent. So we translate it actively. The Romans will not try to attack, oppugnare, the small city, urbem parvam. And then in number two, juvenes, the young men. Profecti sunt. Okay, now proficiscor, proficisci profectus means to set out, like on a journey, for example. And here it's perfect tense. Right? It looks perfect passive, but that's because this is a deponent verb. So the young men set out, multis cum amicis, with many friends, in montes, into the mountains. Then number three, puellae miserae, the wretched, miserable, unhappy girls. passai era. Now this is from patior, pati, passus sum, which is to suffer. And here it's pluperfect, right? Because you've got the supine plus the imperfect of to be. And we translate it actively because it's deponent. So the wretched girls had suffered. Diu for a long time. Propter bellum, because of the war. Now number 4, omnes, that means everyone. Volebant, wanted, or was wanting, imperfect tense. Now loqui looks like a present passive infinitive, but again we translate it actively because loquor is deponent, so it means to speak. De animalibus saevis, about the savage animals. Okay, and then number 5, poetas superbus, the proud or arrogant poet. Laudatus est, now this one actually is perfect passive, was praised or has been praised. Propter opera sua, because of his works, presumably his poems. Then in number 6, postquam nuntii profecti sunt. Okay, after the messengers, and then profecti, this is from the deponent verb proficiscor, I set out, and it's in the perfect tense. After the messengers set out, pauci incolai, a few, or you could just say few, inhabitants, discesserunt, that means departed, that's just perfect tense. Then in number 7, mulieres, okay, the women, and the verb is progrediebantur. This looks imperfect passive, but it's from a deponent verb progredior, which is to advance, like to make progress, and it's imperfect. We're advancing. Cum liberis parvis, with the small children, in agros, into the fields. Okay, number 8, quis, and the main verb is vult. So quis vult, who wants? This is the present tense from volo, velle, volui, to want. So who wants? And then sequi means to follow. So this is, it looks like a present passive infinitive, but we translate it as a present active infinitive because sequor is a deponent verb. Who wants to follow ducem alium, right, another leader, in prolium, into the battle. Okay, and then number 9, milites fortes, the brave soldiers. Volebant, wanted or were wanting. Now mori means to die. Okay, so it looks like a present passive infinitive, but we translate it actively because morior is deponent. This verb mori, by the way, appears in a particularly famous quotation from Horace, that's quoted by the Roman poet Horace, who is quoted by the World War I poet Wilfred Owen, who uses this phrase, dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. Right? Here it is. Yes, it's this poem which is called Dulce et decorum est. And here it is. So dulce et decorum est means it is sweet and fitting. Pro patria mori, that means to die for one's country. And the poem is all about, yes, the waste and the horror of war, and how there's nothing really good or noble about dying for your country. It's just a miserable experience. Anyway, so there we are. They wanted to die for their country, or on behalf of their country. And number 10, nonne. Now remember, nonne is one of these question words that expects the answer yes. So surely, and then the subject is senex, the old man, and the verb is locutus est, which means spoke, right? Perfect tense from loquor. Haec verba sapientissima, these very wise words. So sapientissimus is the superlative from sapiens. Okay, then he seems to be happy. So, okay, he seems is, so to seem is videor. So videor, and then vider is videtur. So we would have videtur, and then happy is latus, and then to be is esse, and then we'll put the main verb at the end of the sentence. So something like this. Okay, she has been seen in the street. So she has been seen. So we're taking the verb videre, and then we need to take the supine, the fourth principal part, video, videre, vidi, visum. So visum, but in the feminine visa, and then we need the present tense of the verb to be. So visa est, she has been seen in the street, in plus ablative, in via. And again, let's put the verb at the end. So in via visa est. And again, this is the complexity because the passive to be seen is formed in the same way as the deponent idea of to seem something. So anyway, there we are. In via visa est. That they went out of the city. Okay, now there are two different ways that we could do this. Okay, we could do it the normal way. So they went out of, so you could use die Schädere, right? So they went out of. So the perfect of die Schädere is die Schässi, and if it's third person plural, die Schässerunt. And then out of the city, ex plus ablative, ex urbe. And again, we can put the verb at the end. So one way of doing it is like this. However, there is another way of doing it, which is ex urbe, and then another verb to go out is the deponent verb egredior. So the principal parts are egredior, egredi, egressus sum. So therefore, egressi sunt. So either of those, there we are, would mean the same thing. Okay. And then they went into the city. Same thing, we can do it two ways. So into the city, well let's do they went into. So the verb to go into is intrare. So perfect intravi, third person plural intraverunt. Then into is in plus accusative, so in urbe. And again, because it's Latin, we'll move that main verb to the end. Another way of doing it is in urbem, and then ingredior is the opposite of egredior, so ingressi sunt. Okay, so these are two different ways of saying the same thing in Latin. Okay, she has spoken to her mother. Now to speak is loquor, loqui, perfect locutus sum. So because it's her, we'd say locuta est. And then to her mother, so mater is a mother, dative case matri. And again, let's put that main verb at the end. So matri locuta est. Okay, now in war, soldiers will always die. Okay, so in war, in bello, soldiers, milites, always, semper. Now, will die. Okay. Now, to die is morior. Now, let's just have a look back at the chart here. So, morior, here's the present tense. Morior, morieris, moritur. Sorry, that should be moritur. There you go. So, in fact, yeah, there we go. Morior, moreres, moritur, morimur, morimini, moriuntur. In the future, moriar, morieris, morietur. So we want morientur. Okay, and the verb's already at the end. So that's fine. morientur. Okay, the enemy, set out. So the enemy is hostes. Now to set out is proficiscor, and the perfect is profectus sum. So profecti sunt in this case because it's plural. They set out in order to cross the mountains. So to cross, this is a purpose clause. So we need ut plus subjunctive. So ut in order to. Now to cross is transire, and for the subjunctive, imperfect subjunctive, we just add nt to the end of the infinitive, transirent, and then the mountains. We'll have montes, or you could say trans montes if you wanted to. You can repeat the trans there. And again, let's move the verbs around a bit. So profecti sunt. In fact, that can stay there because it's at the end of its phrase, but let's move transirent to the end of the sentence. So we'll get something like that. Okay, and then we set out on the third day. Okay, so we set out. So again, we'll use profecti, and this time profecti sumus. And then on the third day, we need dies with tertius, so tertius dies, but because it's time when, this goes in the ablative. So tertio die. Okay. Now, this phrase, tertio die, there is another little complexity here, because if we have a look in this dictionary, dies, here we are, a day, it's usually masculine, but you can see at the top of the screen here, maybe you can see that, there it is, sometimes feminine. It's sometimes feminine if it's talking about a specific appointed day. But anyway, let's not worry about that. Let's keep it masculine here. Tertio die. And let's just move the main verb to the end. There we go. Tertio die profecti sumus. Then we advance. Now to advance is progredior. So progressi sumus. But at last, said tandem, were defeated. Right, now to defeat is vincere, and to do the perfect passive, we need victus sum, or here victi sumus, and then by the enemy ab hostibus. But again, let's move that verb victi sumus to the end of the sentence. And so you get something like this. And then in number 10, you plural will follow. Okay, now let's again go back to the table. To follow is sequor. Okay, and sequor, sequi, secutor, sum goes basically like loquor, and will follow ar, eris, aetur, amor, amini, entur. Okay, so here it's, what is it? You will follow. So sequemini, you will follow. The leader, ducem, accusative case, of the army. Okay, an army is an exercitus, and it's fourth declension, so the genitive is exercitus, of the army into the mountains, in plus accusative, in montes. And all we now need to do here is move that main verb to the end, to the end of the sentence. There we are. So it'll look like that. Okay, now this is a bit of review of verb forms. Okay, so I'll just go through these quickly. So monent, right, is they warn. Right, but monentur is the passive version of that. They are being warned or advised. Now, regent is future tense. They will rule. If it was present, it would be regunt. Regentur is the passive version of that. They will be ruled. Now, audiemos, we will hear or listen. If it was present, it would be audimur. Okay, audiemur is the passive version of that. We will be heard or be listened to. Now, cepit is the perfect tense from capere, so he or she captured or took. Capit is the present version of that, so he or she captures now. Capiet is the future, he or she will capture. Vident is they see in the present tense. Videmini. Now, videmini is you plural. It's a you plural ending, and it's present passive. Okay, so it means be seen, or it could be the deponent version. Okay, so it could be you will be seen, or it could be you will. Sorry, it could be you. Hang on, sorry. It's present tense. So it's either you are being seen, or it's, and that's plural, or it's you, plural, seem, one or the other. So you, plural, are being seen, or you seem. Now, visum est, this could be it was, or it has been seen, or it seemed. Again, depending on whether it's the passive from videre, or whether it's the deponent verb videri. Now, visa est, same thing, she was seen, or she seemed. Amari is the present passive infinitive, to be loved. Kogere is to force or compel someone. Kogi is the present passive infinitive, to be forced or to be compelled. Capi is the present passive infinitive, to be captured or to be taken. Fui is I was or I have been, perfect tense of the verb to be. Esse is to be, present infinitive of sum. Now, interficieris is use singular, will be killed. So it's future passive from interficere. Okay, and one final point here is about deponent verbs in the subjunctive. All you have to do with these is do what you would normally do to a passive verb. So for example, loquor, loqui, locutus sum is third declension, so it just goes like the passive of regere. So therefore the imperfect passive subjunctive of regere is regerer, regereris, regeretur, regeremo, regeremini, regerentur, and therefore the same form of loquor, imperfect subjunctive, goes loquerer, loquereris, loqueretur, loqueremur, loqueremini, loquerentur. Okay, and then finally, at the end here, there's some more vocabulary. Inire is to enter, liberare to set someone free, tacere is to be silent, to be quiet, a gladius is a sword, rex is a king, opus is a work or task or deed, acer means sort of fierce or harsh, something like that. Expectare is to wait for someone. Unde is a question word, meaning from where. In old-fashioned English, it would be whence, W-H-E-N-C-E. An annus is a year. Out means or. Ille means that, or if it's on its own, it can mean he or she or it. Heri means yesterday. Procedere is to proceed, basically, like in English. Difficilis, again, very much like in English, is difficult. An animal is, again, very much like in English, an animal. Vested means your, and it's plural. Amor is love. A mons is a mountain. Currere is to run. Tum is then, or at that time. Hora is an hour. Colligo is to sort of gather or collect. And nonne is the question word that expects the answer yes, so surely something is the case. And felix means lucky or fortunate or happy.